is the story of iron ore, a treasure extremely important to our daily life. For iron can be made into steel. Steel plays a part in our lives every time we ride in a car, cross a bridge, or look at a watch. We take for granted many things that are made from steel, things that make our work easier and our daily life more comfortable. Our story begins in the north-central part of the United States, in the hills of northern Minnesota. Beautiful country with its deep blue lakes and forests, but it's rich country too.
You bet it's rich. It's the richest iron ore region in the USA. My name is Ted Svensson. I work in an iron mine near Hibbing, Minnesota. Right here in the hills of the Mesabi Range, we do 70% of all the iron ore mining in the United States. Some ore is taken from underground shafts, but most of it comes from deep open pits like this one. Here, a high-grade iron ore is shoveled directly into railroad cars for transportation to the surface. But nowadays, taconite, a hard iron-bearing rock, is the chief source of iron for the steel mills. That's because most of the high-grade iron ore is gone, used up. Although useless in its natural state, taconite can be refined. Refineries for that purpose have been built near the taconite deposits. This plant has been laid out so that the flow of material is all downhill. Thus, the force of gravity is put to work to make the processing operation more economical. Trains deliver taconite directly from the pit to the crusher house on top of the hill. Here, the rock is crushed and delivered by conveyor belt to the separator. Because of its magnetic properties, the iron can be separated from crushed rock and water by means of strong magnets inside revolving drums. Waste matter and water do not stick to the outside of the drums and are carried off. But the iron-bearing sludge is collected by the drums for further processing. Processing which turns the sludge into pellets. In its final form, taconite pellets are shipped by the trainload to docks on Lake Superior. The railroad cars are built to empty their loads automatically, so that a whole trainload of pellets can be dumped in less than 10 minutes. Waiting ore boats can be quickly loaded by means of conveyor belts. High-grade iron ore, the other source of iron for the steel mills, is loaded in a similar manner from docks like this one in Duluth. Duluth, Minnesota is 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean. Yet, largely because it's a shipping point for iron ore, it handles a greater volume of goods than any other port in the United States, except New York.
Duluth is just one of the major cities located on America's fifth coastline, the vital coastline of the 5 Great Lakes, more than 2,000 miles long. Bordering on and depending on the Great Lakes are such industrial centers as Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Chicago, Illinois, Gary, Indiana, Detroit, Michigan, Toledo and Cleveland, Ohio, and Buffalo, New York. Cities that manufacture and send out goods to all parts of our nation and the world. The new St. Lawrence Seaway has made it possible for ocean-going ships to carry cargo into and out of the very heart of America. For that reason, one can say that the St. Lawrence Seaway has made Duluth one of the westernmost ports of the Atlantic Ocean in the United States.
I'm Captain Fraser. My ship is the S.J. Bailey. And my job is to transport 18,000 tons of taconite pellets across the lakes to be made into steel at Gary, Indiana. Our trip is the length of Lake Superior, across a part of Lake Huron, and then to the southern end of Lake Michigan. About 900 miles in all. From Duluth to Gary and back should be a trip of about 5 days, providing we don't run into a storm. At the southern tip of Lake Michigan, we reach our destination, the steel mill at Hammond near Gary, Indiana. As we pull into the docks, we'll see other ore carriers arriving and being unloaded. It's the end of a long trip. That ship, for example, has come all the way from Venezuela in South America and up the St. Lawrence Seaway. Nowadays, we get a lot of ore from South America and Canada, and even some from Europe and Africa. Coal barges, just arrived from the coal fields of West Virginia and Kentucky, are unloaded at another point in the dock area. You see, it takes more than iron ore to make steel. Other materials are needed. Coal, for instance, to be turned into coke and used as fuel in the furnaces. And there's limestone, which is shipped by boat or by train from quarries in Indiana and Michigan.
Iron ore from Minnesota, coal from West Virginia and Kentucky, limestone from Michigan. We can begin to see what makes the Great Lakes region America's greatest steel-producing area. This steel plant at Hammond, Indiana, is an important one in our country. Its furnaces turn out more than 7 million tons of steel a year, steel that will be used in thousands of different ways. Of the many kinds of jobs in a steel mill, one that requires great skill and training is that of a rolling mill operator.
I'm Henry Majeski. Here we shape white-hot ingots into slabs. From my control booth, I look through protective plate glass down onto my work. But a lot has to happen before the steel comes to our part of the plant. In order to extract iron from it, the iron ore has to be mixed with limestone and melted in roaring blast furnaces. The liquid or molten iron will be poured into special tank cars for transportation to the open hearth furnaces. In open hearth furnaces, molten iron and other minerals are heated until chemical changes take place. The furnaces are tapped after about 8 hours when the boiling iron has turned to steel. The liquid steel is then poured into ingot molds and left to cool. While still red hot, the ingots are removed from their molds and sent to primary rolling mills like the one I work in. From my booth, I pull the control levers that operate the machinery which rolls and flattens the ingots into slabs. Other mills turn out square chunks called blooms or long, thin bars called billets. These three basic shapes, slabs, blooms, and billets, then go to other plants where they may be made into wire, for example. But steel can take many forms. It's a metal with 1,000 uses, manufactured here in the heart of America.
But the heart of America is not only a center of steel manufacturing, for in the Midwest are also located some of the many industrial cities that depend on steel. Milwaukee, Chicago, Toledo, Cleveland, and Detroit, Michigan, automobile capital of the world. Detroit is located on the Detroit River between Lake Huron and Lake Erie. Into the city come raw and semi-finished materials of many kinds. Out of the city goes transportation for America, cars, trucks, and buses. The automobile industry uses more steel than any other industry in the United States.
Yes, more glass and rubber and nickel, too. A lot of aluminum and plastic. My name is Bill Harvey. I operate an automatic gear cutter that machines steel for one of America's biggest industries, the industry that puts America on wheels. Thousands of men are employed to build the automobiles we need. Many of these men operate automatic machinery. With only the touch of a button, the machines can do difficult, hazardous, or dirty work rapidly and accurately. To operate such machines, today's workers must be highly skilled and well-trained to do precision work with steel. About 90% of an automobile is made of steel. Many kinds of steel are used in many different forms. Some steel is shaped cold by huge stamping machines. Steel for other parts must be heated before it is shaped. Great hammers forge engine crankshafts from blocks of red-hot steel. But most automobile parts are not made in the final assembly plant. As many as 1,000 different factories can supply parts for one automobile. Many of these factories are located in or around Detroit. In some factories, certain parts are put together before they reach the final assembly line. This is called subassembly. But here in the final assembly plant, all the parts have to come together at just the right time and place. Every 90 seconds, a finished car drives off the line, ready to be shipped and sold.
The automobile industry has found that it can save money by assembling cars close to where they are sold. Parts are now shipped to assembly plants in many parts of our states, as well as to plants outside the USA. Many things that happen in the Great Lakes region will have a deep effect on our nation and its people. For in this region lies a key to our nation's economy. With valuable reserves of raw materials and inexpensive ways to transport them. With great plants to refine iron ore into steel. And with factories to make the thousands of metal products that we need. It is no wonder that people in all parts of the United States depend on the industrial Midwest. People such as the housewife in her kitchen, the wheat farmer on the Great Plains, the construction engineer in the city. Their lives will all be touched in hundreds of ways by this story of men, minerals, and machines.